Hello, everyone. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, I've been on the WISE board for, 8 or 9 years, but I used to be a special education teacher, and I used to work with Kerry Griffin when he was at the University of Northern Colorado doing the Center for Technical Assistance and Training. And I ran a supported employment program where we were really successful in a down economy. So I know something about that and how to kind of come up when the opportunities don't look like they're available to you. And I am probably most importantly a mom. My daughter Mikkel is now almost 37 years old. And you might hear her in the background a little bit because she's doing her thing as I am. She lived on her own for many years, but there's a lot of turnover and that got to be a little stressful. So I moved back, but she still has a great team of people that are still coming. And so we are in the thick of what you guys are too. And this is part of my everyday life. It's part of trying to find new ways to kind of take somebody who is accustomed to being out in the community and saying, guess what, you can't go. And that's been a bit of a challenge. So I'll share some of our stories and strategies on how to do that. A little bit about my daughter, Mikkel. She was the first one in her elementary, middle school, and high school who experienced a significant disability. Mikkel does not walk or talk without technology. So technologies have been a big part of our lives. And that's why I think WISE might have asked me to do this, because we've been working on this for a long time. She graduated outstanding senior from her high school. She really changed each of the schools that she was a part of. And then she bought her own home. And so she is a homeowner. She has a net worth of a couple $100,000 now. And she still gets Medicaid or Medicare and Social Security. So we've figured out how to work with the system to get the best out of the system. And one of the things that I'm going to talk to you about kind of picking mottos and themes in your lives and helping people that you're working with identify their own models and themes. But before we do that, I have a little surprise for you. And then I'll get back to this because I almost forgot about this. But one of the things that you can do to get people engaged and busy, let's see if it works. Oh my goodness. There we go. Not the song that I begged, but. So music is a way to engage people. So hopefully you're all awake now. And since I can't see you right now and you can see me, I'm hoping that you get the sense of where we use music a lot to keep engaged with things. And it's a great way to get you connected to the people that you're working with. This is an energetic tune that we use when we're trying to prepare ourselves for work. And we use Tape 5 as a group that we like. Bebo Best and the Super Lounge Orchestra is also a good one to kind of set that tone and that energy that makes people kind of get into a different part of their brain. And so I'm hoping that kind of did you. But I'm going to today throw out a bunch of tools for you that we use at home. I have been consulting on employment for a long time. And I've had my own business for a long time. I currently serve as one of the tri-chairs for the Employment First Advisory Partnership in Colorado. We are a grassroots organization that somehow I was able to get a new Office of Employment First and fund it for a couple $1 million. But we did that through partnerships and through bringing stakeholders into the process and becoming like WISE. I mean, I had WISE in the back of my mind when we were doing this, but so I'm deeply engaged in the employment and particularly customized employment process, and have done a lot of work to understand a lot of the needs that are out there, both from families and individuals with disabilities, but providers and people who are funding these programs and trying to get us out of the silo that we have lived in for 20 years. Colorado used to be in the top 10 states in the country, and we fell to the bottom 10. And so leadership makes a big difference. And so what I'm going to challenge you all to do today is find your inner leader, because we're going to need you to step up in this time. I think this is going to be one of the most pivotal times in the history of services for people with disabilities. And I have been also talking about technology for at least 20 years in terms of a civil right and access to for people with disabilities. And I often have felt like I was, as they say in Texas, pissing in the wind. I mean, I just didn't think we were going to get there. Wise has done much better with that. Washington has done much better. But this is the time. We're finally in the 21st century. And I think we're going to see an impetus to getting people connected to technology, current technology, in the next year, year and a half. So I see this as a new time and a new day for 21st century rehabilitation. And we've talked around it, around the edges, but it truly is a civil rights issue for me. And I think for a lot of people with disabilities. So I'd like to ask a question of you right now. As before I proceed, I'd like to know what is, if you can just throw in the chat and the gals will let me know what's coming up, but what do you really want to learn today? What is the focus? And I know there are bunches of you, but just kind of throw them out there, throw them into the chat box, and I'll keep talking for a few minutes about all the wonderful things that I've done. So I am a whole brain thinker. So when I talk about this, everybody has a different learning style and a different way of approaching this. And so some of the stuff I'm going to show you, you're going to say, and other ones you're going to go, oh, I can do that, or this makes sense to me, or maybe I need to move from an area that I'm really comfortable in to a new area. Because I think, well, in addition to 21st century rehabilitation strategies, I think we're moving into where we're all on an even playing field. We're all going to have to learn new things. And I've been on the planet for a few years, as many of you can tell, and I'm finding this to be a very dynamic and interesting time. I had to learn some new things to put together this presentation in 3 or 4 days. So our timelines are going to be shorter and our expectations of what we need to provide are going to be greater. But I think we also have to give ourselves permission to fail. And we may not have it right away, but that discovery process that we do in employment for people, we're going to do for ourselves. And so as I go through this, I want you to think about what it is that you need to do, how you need to change in order to support the people that are receiving your support services. Your organizations, and I think I saw a couple folks that were managers in there. How do you support people in a different way? And I'm glad to talk about that if you want. I used to do a lot of management leadership training, so I have some skill set in that area and would be glad to talk about how you might be able to connect that. Mikkel and I have a group of wonderful ladies that work for us, and we have some management techniques that are pretty good and reduce turnover, and we have some really great ladies that work for us who bring their own skills and talents to this, and it keeps everything fresh in our house and stuff. So any questions, Beth, Charlie?
Catherine, do you want me to just start listing them out for you?
That would be awesome.
So yeah, we got how it's possible to assist clients from a distance, connecting with clients virtually, how to adapt to an ever-changing world with a focus on virtual contact, ways to connect with customers who are not technologically prepared, perhaps no computer. We got connecting with clients that are nonverbal, over the internet. Yeah, and just best practices, techniques for different needs.
Well, that's good. My daughter's nonverbal, so I can help you there. And I think you're right. It's an ever-changing world, and it's almost as if we wake up in the morning to a new world every day. And that's kind of where we are right now. And this pandemic is going to change every aspect of how we bank, how we shop, how we do government, how we do provide services. It really is, it is, there was a term used years and years ago about kind of like an earthquake, but they called it a socioquake. This is a socioquake. It is going to rattle and change every system that we connect with. So that's where the leadership piece comes in, is that somebody's going to create the new system, and it might as well be you. And you knowing what your customers need and advocating for that in a way that you've never advocated before, because there are a lot of issues that are coming up for people with disabilities that are going to be fresh for them too. And I think what's really important is to understand and I'm going to talk about this, the profound change that they're experiencing, and the lack of connection and the worries about isolation. And there's a whole lot of stuff that are running through the minds of folks with disabilities right now in my circle that I know. And for some of them, that is their lives. They're fearful of their lives. And there are some advocates that have lost their lives. And I don't know if that's happened in Washington, but I was just in Louisiana doing their DD conference in the fall in November. And the chair of their DD council passed away this last week from COVID-19. So there's some of the things that we're going to be talking about with that. In terms of low tech, we're going to have to brainstorm some of that. I'm going to show you some low tech options that we're going to have to figure out how to connect with people if they don't have the technology. But I think that's a systems issue, is identifying who does not have that. And then working from a systems perspective, whether you're a rehabilitation counselor. I know our vocational rehabilitation is changing how they do approval for technology. It used to be you had to go through the whole plan, blah, 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 to get the technology. Now they're reversing that, and they're trying to get the technology to the people first, because that's the only way they really can connect with them. So we're going to reorder our processes, and for Voc Rehab, that's a big shift because they're fairly well entrenched in how they've done things in our state. And I don't know how that is in Washington, but it's a good time to get people updated. But we also have to understand that we're moving big systems, and we're moving folks that have a learning curve themselves and to get comfortable with this technology and everything. So any other questions before I move on?
No,
Okay.
I think you covered it.
Okay, so the families at the forefront of disabilities, I just want to finish up that conversation, is that there were 5 moms like me. You know, we're kind of mountain mover moms. We've got difficult. We're called a lot of things. Last week I did a webinar on parents and engaging parents. And parents are a handful, but you're going to need to engage with them, because the individual that you're working with is going to often either be in their getting support from a distance from their family, or they're getting support in the home from their family. And some of our friends have moved back home with their families during this time. So families are going to be a part of it. But this group of moms, there are 5 of us in the state of Colorado who were frustrated with the lack of technology for people with disabilities. And we kept going to the system saying, how are you going to do this? And they kept saying, well, we're going to get to that. We really have other priorities right now. And so we started our own nonprofit organization. And we're around for 4 years. We did close it down, but we went from nothing. We had an idea and a connection with Ron Ustach from Apple Computers, and brought him in, and we created a 5-star hotel experience for individuals with disabilities and their families up in Aspen, Colorado. And we brought in people from Google and Apple and 3D printers. And we brought in a woman named Amanda Boxtel, who was injured in a ski accident and was a paraplegic. And then she got involved with technology. She put on an exoskeleton at her conference and got up and walked. And she'd been in a wheelchair since her accident. So these are things that I have kind of a can-do attitude. It's like, I may not know how we're going to get it done, but I know we're going to get it done. So we raised all the money. We got very little system support. And so if you've got no money, it's like, well, if there's money somewhere out there. And if you don't have people to support you, there's somebody out there. We just have to be able to build our teams and have a firm commitment on where we want to go. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll have a pretty good idea of at least a starting point. So, okay, so, well, now what? The world changed a couple weeks ago, and we're all kind of locked up in our homes, and we get to go out for a walk here and there. And, you know, you can't go skiing anymore, and can't go snowshoeing anymore, and all the things that us Western folks like to do in our communities. We can walk around the block a few times and stay within 2 miles of our home. That's kind of our our focus, and they measure that now. They have all the data. Our governor's a real data-oriented guy, and so he has all the data on, you know, all the traffic going to the mountains, and everybody was escaping to go climb, you know, the ski areas shut down. Oh, well, we're going to go, you know, the back country. Well, that congregated people. And so now we're all feeling the limits of our space. But one of the things that I learned from, I do some writing is, and artists, is this notion of creative restriction. And creative restriction is that you are, when your boundaries are closer in, you are almost forced to be more creative. And, you know, an author sees a blank screen and has to write a novel. An artist sees a blank canvas, and they can't go outside of that structure, but what they create within that structure is amazing. And some of the work that they create within that structure lives for centuries, in terms of the books that have made it through, you know, centuries, and the artwork that, you know, you can go online now and see for free. It's amazing what you can do with restriction. It does take rethinking. It is a little bit frustrating, but it is very, very powerful. And so you may not feel powerful right now. You may be just kind of going through a whole lot of emotions right now, but it is an incredibly powerful and creative time. So one of the ways I like to go is, I'm a big fan of Einstein and quantum physics. I don't know, is anybody else out there? Please raise your hand and the girls will let me know. But quantum physics is where I want you to go with this now. And you may think, well, I'm a job developer. What does quantum physics have to do with me? It has a lot to do with you. Most of great employment services are all based on a quantum science. So E equals my community squared is where it is. It can be employment, it can be engagement, it can be energy, but it takes a community. And one of the challenges is that you have to build that community differently, because you can't go out and meet people now. You can't go into the stores. You can't go into do the job development that you've always done. You can't just say, oh, I see somebody over there. They look like they could use somebody, and go talk to them. You're going to have to engage people. And part of the challenging thing that we've got here, and this is why I like the source model so well, which is very similar to a SWOT analysis, for those of you who are familiar with that. A SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Well, I liked it, but I don't think it really got to the source or the energetic process of that. To me, the old source or the SWOT analysis is a little bit of the Newtonian science era. It can be a little bit limiting, and it's a good focusing tool, and but it doesn't necessarily open up the possibilities in the way that I personally find helpful. So one of the ways that you do this is you look at your strengths, and so I think a good idea is if you can get your community together. Now that community is going to change. So think about it in terms of, who are the stakeholders? Initially, as provider organizations, you may need to get everybody together. And I think that's what's happening very quickly now. Since I'm on the board, I know that WISE is scrambling, you know, coming up with all this new stuff. They're kind of in this process of pulling stakeholders together to see, how do we meet the needs of you all? And then you're going to have to get together in your communities and say, how do we get together with the people that are really important, our typical funders, our families, the stakeholders, people with disabilities, the community leaders, because employment is going to change too. So how many of you, just as a question, how many of you think that this is going to be over in a couple of weeks and you're going to go back to your old job? It's going to be the same.
Katherine, we're getting a lot of no's. And I also wanted to let you know that you have at least a handful of fellow quantum physics lovers.
Oh, yay! I'm thrilled to hear that, because it makes it so much easier when you get that. And I will give you an example for those of you who might not get that in just a minute. But one of the things to do is it's not going to be the same. The jobs aren't going to be there. Those small businesses that we've come to, they're going to take a year to recover if they survive. And I have a son who's in the small business, and he has, and actually, I think I sent a couple tickets to Cecily because I'm trying to support my son, but they have a Dinner Detective franchise up in Bellingham and in Seattle. So there are 2 tickets floating around, and we'll see if we can figure out how to get them to people. But they had their best year. They have 15 locations across the country. And this is a murder mystery kind of thing that they do. And they're in California, and they're in Portland, and they're in Seattle, and they're in Houston, and they're in Kansas City, and they're in Raleigh and Charleston and Phoenix, and I can't remember all the places. But my son sent me a text probably early February. And he said, Mom, it's the best year. Maybe, no, I guess it was probably closer to late February. So we just had the best year we've ever had. And a week later or so, we get the announcement that we have to close these. So within a week, he went from his best year to his worst year. So think about this, and I don't have the answer for this, but I'm just going to put it out there for you to think about. How can we help small business? How can we solve their problems? Because you believe it or not, we're still one of the people that get paid. The girls working for Macau are still getting paid. And part of our system was able, and that's a strength for us, is that they got to it quickly. They create, and as your state, you get paid to go to training. We have retainer for our community, our consumer direction. You have a retainer fee now. So just to keep people employed, they have a retainer fee structure. So if people work with them on technology and getting them connected through that technology, paid, whereas before they would have been paid to take people out in the community. So being creative, getting those stakeholders together. So think about how you do that for both small business and your stakeholders. Be a community resource as well. And so as you're looking at your strengths, bringing your stakeholders together, bring in some people from the community. Because this is either going to work really well for us in terms of hiring really great people who are all of a sudden available, because a couple months ago, we were like, we don't have enough people. We're never going to have enough people, but now we may have some of the best people available to us when we come out of this. And there may be people who really do want to work. And there may be some tracks that as managers, we have to figure out, how do we take these real high performing people and make use of them within our organizations? And then how do we pay them? And how do we use this as a recruitment strategy to bring in some of our best people? So think of it in terms of that, as well as what kinds of jobs will be emerging. Denver or Colorado has an Office of Future Work, and I'm also serve on the State Rehab Council. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're having the Office of Future Work come talk to the State Rehab Council about where they think work is going to go. Now, obviously, that's changed from the time that we set that up, because that's in June. But now we're going to have firsthand knowledge of where they think that is. And in our state Department of Labor is this Division of Vocational Rehabilitation is under the Department of Labor, but you'll want to really connect with Department of Labor and workforce development centers in your community and work together to see how you're going to figure this out. So you have your strengths. So identify the people, the money, the certain characteristics of your community, and you'll brainstorm that. Then you'll begin to think about some of these opportunities that I was just talking about. So where are the opportunities for both your organization, for the state, and for that family? What are the opportunities that begin to create opportunities for that individual with disability? And one of the concerns I have is that we're not going to keep that self-determination thing going here, that we're going to be so concerned about what we do that we may lose our focus on our values. So an opportunity to reinstill your values, maybe update your values a little bit, and update the idea that you need to, as part of your guiding principles, bring in technology as a civil right. And how do we make sure everybody in our program has the appropriate technology? This is a beautiful time to create an individual technology plan. And one of the things that we're going to have an opportunity to do, and I'll talk about this in a minute, is that we may have an opportunity to revisit everybody's individual support plan, because the old one may not be as relevant for the time that we live in. And for your quantum physicists in the group, you know relativity has a lot to do with this. So what's unique? What's unique about our organization? What's unique about our employment specialists? What's unique about our community? How do you begin to identify this? And you can do this, you're gonna have to do it virtually, but there's a way to do this. I'm on a board in Texas and we did this virtually. Everybody created a Google document, and what we did is we just filled this in, and we were able to get, the way that we set up the Google Doc, we could see everybody's comments on what they thought were all of these. So there's a way to do that. Create a Google Doc, send it out, do a survey monkey, whatever. You can figure out how to get this information out electronically. And that'll be valuable information for you, because you're going to have relevant information. The past is the past. You can take what your valuable lessons from it, but boy, we're going to be doing this for 60 or 70 days, if not longer. And so we've got to kind of be willing to assess. And this can be part of your culture, is to do quarterly assessments around this, which I would recommend. What are the resources available to you? And this is a nice time for you to check into your own resources. And you can do this personally. What are my strengths? Where are my opportunities? What's unique about me? And for those who know me, know I'm quite unique. So the salsa dancing, handstand, gymnastic mom, who has been working in the field for a long time. I mean, I'm kind of unique in that. And we were laughing yesterday because we did and this is how we're keeping people engaged, is Mikkel, I was out doing handstands because we're trying to stay in shape virtually, of course, and I was doing in the hallway of our condo, and Mikkel's got her little, score sheet 10 and everything, and everybody thought that was pretty hysterical, but we're being creative, and she really enjoyed that, and we got her connected through Facebook that way, and it's fun. So technology, Facebook is, speaking of resources, is a huge resource, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. What are the challenges? As somebody said, getting challenged, what if people don't use technology? What if they're in rural areas where they don't have broadband? How do we get to them? How do we get smartphones to people? How do we get iPads to people or computers to people? Chicago just bought 100,000 computers for the students there. So now all these kids, now here's a challenge for any of you working with the schools. Are those computers going to kids with disabilities? That would be my question, because right now I think online learning is going to be a big challenge for those special educators. So how do we support them in doing some of the things we're going to talk about in terms of activities that you can do? Special education teachers are going to need a whole lot of support here. And you all, as providers in the adult community, might be able to figure out a way to help them, because those kids, what they get now as juniors and seniors particularly, is going to affect how you deliver a program. And so how can we get that pre-employment training supports? How can we get those going? How can we brainstorm with the voc rehab counselors how to get technology to those people? These are going to be some of the things that we can do. And of course, where's your source of enthusiasm and energy? Where does that come from? Some of that's going to come from within, just by the nature of your commitment and your passion for the work. Other ways, it's got to come from how we structure our reward systems, and what does a good performance look like in this world? So somebody that was really good at being out in the community now is forced to work with technology. How do you reward and support them and keep them enthusiastic about this and energized about it? These are some of the things that you as organizations are going to have to kind of take a look at. Dealing with overwhelm. Oh my goodness. This is just like some of the craziest stuff. And everybody is going to be dealing with this. I was waiting for this. I went through my feed and I saw Chris Como from CNN has COVID-19. And so, then news people are terribly overwhelmed by this. And we know the medical professions are. And so we are in a fairly good position. We're overwhelmed, but we're not at that level. And we have decent resources right now. But we don't know that families and individuals have those same resources. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about one of the things that you're going to be managing. And here's an example of low tech. Look at this, grief. You're going to be managing grief, your own, and everybody around you is going to be grieving at some point in time. And those metaphysical people that you might be on here, lungs represent grief. And here we are, we've got a world that's in grief. The entire world is that way. So understanding the grief cycle, which is historically chronic for families and individuals with disabilities, is now going to be a part of your everyday job, is helping people do that. And it's really important to connect with this, because until you connect with this, you're not going to get to discovery. You're not going to get to profiles. You're not going to get to this other stuff. So it doesn't take a long time, but it does mean that you have to do it. So I want you to, in a second, grab a pencil and paper, because I'm going to give you a couple things that I want you to write down and that you can have. So there's a guy named Ken Moses, and he's got some articles on the internet. I met Ken Moses when Mikkel was just diagnosed. Mikkel's adopted. She came to us from Korea, undiagnosed with cerebral palsy. Part of my can-do attitude came from the fact that our insurance didn't cover anything, and at that time, Medicaid waivers did not exist, and we had a whole lot of durable medical equipment and therapy to pay for. And I was going through a divorce at the same time. So I was raising 2 children, going back to work, trying to raise funds to pay for therapy appointments and wheelchairs and communication devices and all that. That went on for 11 years. And as hard as it was one of the best experiences for me, because I may not have done that for myself, but I am one of those fierce moms that said, I will do it for my kid. She is always going to have the best. And so I learned how to ask for help. And one of the things that you've got to do when you're grieving is begin to ask for help. And I'll get to all the techniques and stuff in a minute, but this is really important stuff. So what I learned when Mikkel was first diagnosed was that as we were coming back from the doctors, and when we had 2 doctors that kind of had, ivory tower doctors with the white coats and everything back then, the wingtip shoes, because this was a long time ago, and they literally laid her down on the floor, or had me lay her down on some therapy mats, and they pointed at her, and they turned and they walked away. They didn't tell me what was wrong with her, but there was a therapist in the room that I had connected to, and she had given me her phone number. So I'm driving the station wagon. I had the Buick Bomber back then, and big station wagon with the 2 kids in it, and I'm driving back to the suburban house, and I realized she has cerebral palsy, or cerebral palsy. So my denial of fact didn't last too long, but it did when she first saw her. She came off of an airline from Seattle, interestingly, from Korea, and they literally held her up like this and called her last name, and that's how we got our daughter after, home studies and all the other stuff. But I knew as soon as I saw her that something wasn't right. But it wasn't until she was 6 months old that we got to the point where we had the fact. Then I went into denial of implication. Oh, okay, she's CP. No big deal. Nothing's really going to change. We're going to treat her like she's everybody. Well, I didn't know that it was going to change everything in my life, much like this is going to change everything in your lives. And then I got to the denial of conclusion. Oh, things are going to change. And I didn't realize at the time that my marriage would change, my place of living would change. I would have to become a professional fundraiser. I didn't know all this stuff. And I would have to go back to work while fighting a divorce and, all the stuff that goes with that. So there are periods where you're overwhelmed, But what I've learned from that is the sooner you can let go and help people let go of what they used to know and help them transition into what they do know and be okay with being uncomfortable for a while. And I think that's one of the best things that we can do for people right now is acknowledge their discomfort. So I'm going to give you a couple little things. I want you to write down ENUF in a line because I'm going to give you words for that. It's called the enough model. And as you notice, I'm giving you things to do. So when you do remote training, it's not just me talking to you. I'm looking at trying to engage you, and I may or may not be successful. We'll find out at the end of this, right? But I've used music to kind of get your attention. I'm using a PowerPoint. I'm using low tech. And I've also brought in, gotta go back to this one, something with some art on it. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. And how you can get that back and forth with people. But E stands for empathy. N stands for non-judgment. U stands for understanding. And F stands for feeling. When you connect with the people that you're going to be reaching out to and providing services for, take 5 minutes at the beginning of your connection with them and let them tell you what's going on in their life. Listen with empathy. Carrie Griffin calls it smooth listening. Other people call it active listening. But you are listening. You're not asking questions. You're not adding to the overwhelm. You are adding to the centering, to the grounding. You're getting people a chance to put their emotions in a place where they can activate another part of their brain, which will give them some new skills and new opportunities. But until you focus on the emotion, you're not going to get to this other stuff. And this is stuff that you can use low tech, high tech, old world, new world. It just is how we connect with people. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. Any questions on that before I move on?
No questions. Thank you, Katherine.
You're welcome. See, I can talk a lot. So strategies 1 is part of what you're going to do in this transformational process. And you'll look at all these words here, but these are the words that you kind of want to connect with. Relaxing. You want to get people to relax. And you're going to do that by communicating with them. And this enough strategy is one of the ways to do that. You're going to help build a community with intent. And so this intent has to have a purpose, and it leads into that. Why am I doing this? If you're asking somebody to work with you remotely, you've got to explain to them why. And you can't just say COVID. That's not the only reason, because this was going to come anyway. COVID just kind of put this on rocket engine fuel, and we're now here much faster than we thought we would. But work is changing. It hasn't changed much for people with disabilities. You guys are probably one of the more, if not the most progressive states. So you guys are a little bit further ahead than a lot of places in the state. But it's really important now. You have a new work relationship that needs to be redefined. So 1, I'm going to talk to you. You can count on me to do A, B, and C. You start that with them. And what can I expect from you as we're working remotely or as we're trying to get you the devices that you need? What are you willing to do to participate in this? Because this is a partnership, and we want to emphasize that partnership. We're going to build community with intent. And this is interesting on how to build community when you can't go out. I mean, it's an amazing challenge. Now, there are gamers that have done this forever. And I honestly think gaming strategy, for those of you that might know something about that, that's an area of expertise that you can share with people right now. We've got to use online intent, and we've got to bring in gaming strategy. Why? Because gaming strategy keeps people hooked. And there's a way of moving people up the ladder. And you know, all of you played some kind of video game, I'm quite sure. But you know, you start out and you can't play it very well. and then you build on that skill and you get to the next level. So maybe think about leveling out these things. Maybe you start with level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and you make it visual so people can see the progress that they're making, and they can check off the box, or they can get the certificate, or they can get some sort of technology getting excited for them. But think about how you break that down so people feel successful. I'm a dancer. I had no rhythm. I had no music. I couldn't hear the music well. And yet, my dance teacher made me feel good every time I left. Even if I just started marching in place and starting to learn a basic pattern, she brought, and I've watched her for years because she's a good friend of mine now, how she takes people who have nothing like me and get them to keep coming back and paying for the opportunity to be frustrated. But the reason is that she connects with a passion. I want to learn how to dance. That's my desire. What I need is good instruction. Now, who's going to provide that? It's my dance teacher. So begin to think about that. What is the desire of your person in this setting? And what does that person need from you to be self-determined and in control of their life? And then how do you provide that? Okay, so you're going to come up with a new working agreement through this. You're going to need to set up a routine and set expectations, just like you would in the in-person world. You're going to have to do that, but it's going to be done. Obviously, the modality is going to be done differently for a period of time. So, and that is supposed to be support plans. And now I see my typo. I didn't see it before. We've only been through this like 5 times, but none of us saw it. So, but you're going to review and update the support plans. I honestly think this is where you bring case managers back into the group, and you're going to have to say, for the next 3 months, what does our support plan look like? Because most of those support plans are not very relevant now. And I'll tell you why I think this is so important. We are what? We've been in social isolation. We're starting our 3rd week. And you guys were ahead of this on us. But we have yet, even despite my phone calls, despite me talking to everybody else, we have yet to get anything from the case manager. How are you? We need to update your plan. What's available to you? Our agencies are moving so slow here. I don't know what they're doing in Washington. And if you could take a minute and tell me, I'd love to know. So type it in the chat box. Let me know if case managers are talking to families and individuals and redoing these plans. I would really, really like to know.
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah.
Just a couple questions right now. Do you want them?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. We were wondering if you could talk about appropriate boundaries for job coaches. And also if you could talk a little bit about job developing during this time where you can't meet with managers.
Yeah, and we're going to get to some of that as we go through. And job development is, you know, it really is going to be a community by community thing, because again, we don't know how many businesses are going to be taken out by this. But what I think you do is you do all that pre-employment stuff instead of just focusing on the job development. 1, do they have an ABLE account? Because you know what, they're going to get a check in a couple weeks. Now, is that a check going to affect their benefits or not? But their check is going to fund a launch fund for a small business. You think about how you begin to set that up. So a financial plan is one of the things that I would encourage you to focus in on with people now, because honestly, unless you're going to work for Amazon, which is big in our community, or Walmart, which is big, but you're putting people who have immune challenges in a difficult situation. So I don't think that's a really good idea right now. You can begin to look at virtual work if they have the skill set. If they don't have the skill set, then what is the plan to help them get that? So because it's a new world of work, I would go back, my personal thing would go back and review that. Now, let me explain how we're doing this at our house. My daughter has had a successful small business for a long time. She makes and sells bracelets. She used to do presentations, and she used to make $500 to $700 an hour. Well, then 2008 came around and that plan went away because nonprofits had no money to pay for airfare and transportation for her. So they went to this format, webinar formats. Well, my daughter does not want to sit and look at a white light and not see her audience. We'd built a past plan on it. We'd built everything on it. It was all set. It was working. She was making almost $1,000 a month. And in the fall of 2008, it all went away. And we're kind of in that spot again, aren't we? So I think what we did is we began to say, okay, this isn't going to work. So what are some of the other ways? And we didn't do it quickly. I'm not going to say that we really did, but we focused on her other skill, which was she liked to make bracelets and sell. My daughter loves to sell. And so we looked at places for her to sell. We kind of created opportunities for her to sell her bracelets so that she was still making money, but she wasn't making $1,000 a month like she used to. And we canceled the past plan and we regrouped. So I think part of this is a regrouping process. And then we did it not too long ago where we're selling that and I'm going, there's more. This is getting stale. How do we keep it fresh? And then we started our podcast, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And we started a website back in 2011. And that's been part of what we've been doing is creating content. So she's become a content developer. And we've kind of gone into business together more that way. So that's part of what we're going to do. Can you, Beth, can you tell me those other questions real quick so I can make sure I covered it all?
Yeah, no questions, but just to answer your question, it looks like we're getting some mixed reviews, that some people are in a lot of contact with their case managers and others haven't
Okay.
heard.
Yeah.
And then also, Catherine, I just wanted to take this time to say that it is 1:51 right now. So whenever feels natural to you, we can
Take
go
a
on
break.
that side.
Okay, yeah, I think we may just take a natural break here in a few minutes. So I think the important thing is to remember the humanness of the transformation that we're going through, and that some of your goals will have to be redefined. But before you start focusing on big job development, do your research. Do some community mapping. Who's open, who's not open, who's planning on reopening. Because right now in our community, banks are open and food services of, restaurants are open, some of them, gas stations, and the grocery stores and Target. That's about it. So the jobs out there aren't really out there. They may be in the computer area, or they may have another way. They might be in our field of disabilities. And so maybe we figure out how to get people who are self-advocates in paid positions to start helping build a community and supporting people in that way. And that may be an area that we might want to explore.
Catherine, your cat is a hit in the chat.
This is Ollie. This is Ollie. He's a big old boy, as you can tell. He's like 12 pounds of fun here. But one of the things it made me think of when Ollie came in and wandered in is that, and we talked about comfort critters yesterday on Facebook with people, and I think as we go through part of in the IPS, an individual placement services program, they have a WRAP program, which this is an activity that you could do for people, high tech, low tech. It's just, you can do this, kind of help people over the phone, is creating a comfort box. And this is something that they're kind of, things that they have a comfort plan when people get stressed. And this is pre-employment, because people get stressed in jobs. You're teaching people how to cope with change. You can justify all this stuff by helping people cope with change, and it leads to health and safety as well as job skill, because a lot of the skills on an unemployment site are a lot of coping skills. So the WRAP program through IPS does an awful lot about, it helps you create a support plan. When I'm feeling anxious, what do I do? Who do I call? What objects do you keep in a small box close by that remind you of good times? For me, it might be a seashell. It might be Ollie. because all he's become the individual support cat for all of Mikkel's team because he is so full of love, and they're nervous. Our team members are nervous. And so let me ask you this, for those of you who are working in an agency, how much stress are you all experiencing?
We're getting, yeah, lots of stress.
Lots of stress, yeah. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Nope, that's it. I'm getting lots and lots of messages about how.
Well, and you know, I know we're talking employment and virtual supports for people with disabilities, but we've got to come across as the grounded one right now. And so we have to have, and Beth, that may be a whole, I know Marcia's doing some stuff on that, and I'm glad to do another one on tips to how to run through this, and some life planning tips for folks who are working in the field. But one of the things is that you really do have to come up with and do it together. I mean, you don't have to do it on your own, or you can do it with people, and you can model this for the individuals you're supporting. It's like, I'm finding this to be kind of a stressful time. Are you? So let's create a little, comfort box. And, when you find a shoe box, a nice box, a basket, whatever people have around. And then you ask people to go find the things that make them comfortable when they're stressed, and you help them create that management plan for themselves, on that they know what to do before they're anxious. So the whole thing about this is to be preventative and proactive, so that people know that. And I know that. I know if I don't work out, like finally my gym went online, thank goodness, because it's like I worked so hard to get to this point of fitness, and they weren't doing very much. They were doing some Instagram stuff. I'm going, this isn't cutting it. So finally they went to 30-minute online classes. Well, that settled me down. That grounded me down. And so I'm a better support for Mikkel's team and from her. And so my focus is always on health. And I learned the hard way, as both a professional in the field and a mom, if I don't take care of me, this thing falls apart. So please give yourself permission to be kind to yourself. And I'm going to put Ollie down for a bit. I've got a couple books I want to show you. Has anybody read this book? For those, it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving F exclamation point CUK. This is a great book for people. So I'm going to give you some tools to work yourself through some of this, is what to care about and what not to care about. Here's another one. People like these colorful titles now. This is a different generation book than mine. But my daughter-in-law and I share a podcast. We started this up, and it's called Not Your Basic Bitches. So I'm getting comfortable with saying cuss words, but it's not necessarily I do something often. But is it time to use these words? But this is one way to get out of your head and get into your plan, because stress will kind of keep you in that place. And then here's another one. You Are a Badass. How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life, which is a really good book. And what we're needing to do now is be a bunch of badasses. So those books might be helpful for you. I didn't plan on sharing those, but to help us deal with the stress. But that RAP concept, and you can Google it, RAP IPS, and it'll show you exactly how to do that. But it's a very powerful strategy that they use in individual placement services for employment. It's really directed at employment. So I think you'll find some things there that can be very helpful for you. So now I'm going to show you some tools. How many of you are familiar with Powtoon? Have you ever used an animated video program? And if so, tell me how. But I'm going to show you something, because again, I was very worried when I was talking to somebody at the state, and I'm going, how are we getting this message out to people with disabilities? And people would tell them, and the websites, I went over all the websites, and they had plenty of fact sheets and memos, and I'm going, well, this isn't for people who are non-readers or have reading challenges. This is not accessible. And I'm not saying this is completely accessible, but it at least gives you a tool to use. Now, how I want you to look at this, we've got this on the coronavirus right now, but this could be made for employment. This could be made, and I'll show you another one that somebody put together on customized employment explaining the process. But we can begin to develop these tools. This is a great time to develop tools. Now, what if you engaged people with disabilities to help you do this? On there, so people that were working who had some success, they could help be a part of that. Maybe you could create some part-time jobs for people to do these kinds of things. Maybe you could go to voc rehab, and somebody who has this kind of skill set, you could contract with them to do some of this stuff, because this messaging seems to be difficult for human service organizations. I'm not going to lie, I'm not seeing very much of it, but this is an example of Powtoon, and it's a really nice way for people to do that. So I'm going to play this for you, and you can take a template like this and put whatever you want to in it. These characters are interchangeable. You can change the message, you can take a template, but you can make it work for the community and the situation that you're available to. But I just chose this one because it's timely. Can you hear it?
Sounds great.
All right, so that is one tool that you can use, and I'm going to kind of show you how to do that. Now, you could take this and you could work your working agreement with that. You could create that together. You could create your employment plan together to share with family and to share with other people. You could create and give tools for that person to tell their story to other people about what they're going through. And part of what I hope that we get from this point is that, and discovery is a big part of that, profile development, all those kinds of things are, and video resumes are all about telling an individual's story. And so if we can really use a variety of tools to help that individual tell their story, it's really helpful. So this program, so this is how you do it. So you can just, click on this and you can swap out a person, and it's really easy to utilize. So if I decided that person isn't somebody I'm really excited about, sorry, my internet's been a little bit slow. But I can change different icons, and you can do that, and you can move them around. So it's very much like a PowerPoint kind of situation. And they have a lot of templates that are very helpful. So you can see there's a video timeline resume that you can use. You can just take these ready-made templates, and there are a couple other groups that do this. This one is one that I've heard good things about and has gotten some really good reviews. So it might be something that you might find available. But this coronavirus thing was already pretty much put together, and I just put individual things in there about the case manager and all that. So you can take that, and what I honestly think it would be really great to get a group of people with disabilities to help them walk through and create that. And then if there's a way to pay them, then that would be some additional resources for them to do that. And the other thing to do is to bring in some young kids to help you do this and pay them. And then those are people that can be on, provide some ongoing support for individuals with disabilities. Mikkel and I did that when she was in high school, is that we went to the journalism class and to the kids that needed to have extracurricular activities. And the journalism class did a story on Mikkel that made it to the school newspaper. At that time it was a paper, but now it would be an online story. And then they got credit for it as a project. And then we found people that would help her create her PowerPoint presentation for extra credit at school. So there are people that need these things. They need to build their portfolios. They're going to be hungry for jobs. Give them something to do. Get them to help you in those things. All right, let me go back to PowerPoint here.
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah.
We have a couple people asking, do you know if what this cost or if it cost much?
That I just showed you was free. Now here's the trick with Powtown. It's not particularly cheap. I will say this, 30 seconds, it's like Animoto and a couple of those, you get 30 seconds free. Now they don't allow you to have great distribution. That's why this is not embedded into my presentation, because they would have a membership. But what would be really cool, again, as part of your source idea, is that, okay, Powtown's a great resource for people. And again, I love it because for people who are non-readers, even though there's a lot of text in there, I just left it in there, you could play with that text. You could probably do voiceover in there too, which I would recommend for some folks as well. And but that is, you do have to pay for that, but you could share that. Maybe Voc Rehab can buy that, and they can give passwords to everybody to utilize it, or your agency can buy one for the whole agency, and then the cost is not so bad. I think it's a couple $100, but right now they're on sale. So if you do one, they'll try to get you to buy it, and they'll give you a 25% discount. This was also made with Powtown, but you can see it was a different kind of format. Now this is Edward. I know Edward because I know his sister really well. Imagine Enterprises is a provider organization in Seabrook, Texas, and they serve all of Texas in a variety of consumer-directed attendance support services as well as employment. And so when this came on, the family decided they needed to do something with Edward to get him involved. And Ed's in his 50s. And so they really wanted him to understand the importance of hand washing. So one of the best ways to do that was to have Ed create this little video. So I hope you enjoy this, because he's pretty entertaining.
Oh, wash your hands, please wash your hands many times, please wash your hands. Use soap and scrub between your fingers. Wash the front and back of your hands. Okay. Whenever you're ready. Okay. Okay, cut.
So you can find this video both in the presentation, but we have let me pull this down a little bit, and I'll show you where you can find that and many other videos. But you can see Edward had fun in that. He was engaged in it. He was in control of the messaging, which I think is so important for people with disabilities, So you give them some control over how we shape this new world for them. You develop skills, and then they can share this with their community, because Edward is big in the self-advocacy organizations in Texas, and he can share those with people. And this is something that you can share on a phone. There are mobile platforms for this as well. And so here's an activity, is that you can take a phone, somebody probably in the house has a phone, and you begin to film these little things. And then you can give an assignment to somebody, and you can say, I want you to film this. I want to do a visual discovery. We're going to go on a photo safari of your house, and I want you to take pictures of things that interest you. And we can do this discovery process with that, and then we can create a video for that. And then there's skill development involved in that. It takes it from being a little bit less passive and a little bit more active. So this is what we ended up doing for Mikkel, and that's Mikkel. I'm surprised I haven't shown you a picture of her yet, and this is her big, bold community. Shining Beautiful series came from Mikkel's middle name, which is Korean, which is Michong, which translated means Shining Beautiful, and that's how we came up with that. So you'll get to see some of these videos today, but we have Peter Smith from Australia on customized employment. We've got a bunch of iPad stuff. We've got something to share with moms. We've got Vicki King, who is a Hollywood expert, wrote a book on how to write a movie in 21 days or less. And I think I actually have the book here. This is her book on storytelling. Vicki and I have become friends because I had enough guts to ask her some questions. And when she was in town, I asked her if I could be her chauffeur, and we ended up being really good friends. We've known each other for almost 15 years now. But so I've got a couple short interviews for parents on how to tell your story and how to get resources. One of the things I mentioned that I was able to get Mikkel a lot of resources, wheelchairs, communication devices. Some guy carried Mikkel up a 14,000-foot mountain to pay off her therapy bills when she was young. And I realized, why was I able to do this and other parents weren't? It's because I learned how to tell a good story. And I got people to buy into the story, and I gave them a place to solve a problem. And particularly now, this is a resource. People want to help. They want this to go away. They don't want to see people in pain. And so these are some of the things that you can, we've got plenty of videos that will be helpful for you. And, Mikkel interviewed these down here, conversations with the community. You can get people to start interviewing other people remotely and through Facebook, and I'll kind of go over that. But Dominic Garcia is one of the news anchors in Colorado that Mikkel met when she was at Easter Seals Camp for Talking with Technology Camp. And so when he became famous and everything, he came over the house and Mikkel interviewed him. Teach people how to do interviewing skills, how to ask questions, how to, it's one thing to go in and ask for a job. It's another one to interview the employer. So these are all skill sets that we can begin to do. And we've got some fun little other videos in there for you. And that's our website. So we created a website. Now we're in the process of updating. So part of what we're doing right now, because Mikkel's been working, is that we're working with a website developer to update the website and update the logo and all those kinds of things. So if you're self-employed, it's a really good chance to update everything. So I think that for us, that is all billable services under employment services. So think about how you can help people update everything. That should be a billable service for you under employment. So there you go. Let me get back to the PowerPoint. I'm doing pretty good navigating this, aren't I? Except for I lost the PowerPoint. Let me go back through the browser. There we go. And sometimes that little thing comes down. Okay, so I'm going to show you some things, and you do have these in the links that they're going to share with you. Folks who are nonverbal. This is really important, and this is my daughter uses talk chat. I should remember that, but she uses an iPad for communication. We do everything. We think Mikkel is the first nonverbal podcaster in the world, as far as we know. We haven't seen anybody else that does it. But part of the reason why she's able to do that is that she has a really good person to help support her, and her team support her doing that. But these are, think about how you can solve an immediate problem. COVID is on everybody's mind, but if you're nonverbal, how do you get access to that? How do you tell people if the language is not there? So these are, that you have a link to this, and I believe you can download this. This was put together by, I believe, the University of Colorado, JFK Partners put this together, and the Assistive Technology Partnership. But there's a link that will be shared in the chat box with you, or at the end of the session. So think about how you can update people's communication to reflect the changes. That alone is a billable service for you all, and should be part of an updated plan, is to help people come up with a language to talk about this stuff. Now, maybe somebody's verbal, but maybe they just need to be able to say this. And this goes into a bit of that wrap concept that we talked about earlier, is got to give people new tools to say what is on their mind right now and help them identify how they're feeling. And this was pretty good, I thought. So this next part is, and I want you to think about this, is that we're in the chrysalis stage. We're in that little green chrysalis, and we're kind of all mushed together right now. We're having to reform our reality. We were once caterpillars, and now we're here. We're just kind of mush. But eventually that's going to sort itself out, and we're going to become those beautiful butterflies again. But we are in a developmental stage. And so please be patient with yourself and the system and with everybody else. Don't put too much stress on yourself, but understand that you're going to be kind of changing from the inside out as well as the outside in. So,
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah.
Just letting you know that your screen is not being shared currently.
Oh, it's not. Okay, well, let me go back then. I'm sorry. That's good information to have. Let me get back and get to Zoom. All right. All right, I'm going to go back a little bit and share this one. Thanks for letting me know, because I didn't know.
Looks
These
great.
are the things. So there's your butterflies. There's your chrysalis. So now you know what I'm talking about here, is that it's a very developmental process. And some people will grow very quickly through it. Others will take some time. And so that patience is going to be a big part of it. And be patient with yourselves, because some of you may take to this stuff really, really well. And people more my age, because I'm a boomer, some of us may have a little struggle moving into this new world. But there's a constant reinvention. I always used to tell myself I'm the queen of the bounce. I'm the mother of invention. I have reinvented myself so many times. I think Jimmy Buffett has a song that talks about that. The magnetic strip is worn thin, but you know, we do this. This is part of life. This is part of our evolutionary times that we live in. And so give yourself some time. Acknowledge each other. And I think this is one of the things, as you remember, we talked about building things in kind of, you know, phases and bringing them down. Acknowledge the simple ways people progress. And, you know, I like Canva. I don't know if you are familiar with the website Canva, but this whole thing was done on Canva. And you can take these templates where somebody did most of the work for you. And Canva is very affordable. And I think, again, agencies should just own these and make them available for their staff. But this would be a reasonable investment that is not a high dollar investment for folks. And it may be something that you can pay for in some other ways. But let me show you Canva really quick. So you can text this, you can mail it, you can put it in part of a presentation, and I'll show you exactly, oops, that's not the one I want to show you. I got a couple other, oh, yeah, they can be animated. So this is one thing. I'm going to kind of start with this is the resume. If you can see this, you can come up with some really fun resume builders that people can pick and choose. You can be working with people on Canva and say, what how would you like your video, your resume to look? They don't have to be dull and boring, but there are all sorts of templates that are already done for you. There are infographics that you can get from here. And I'll kind of open this up. And how many of you have used Canva before? Can you just raise your hand so we can get kind of a poll on this?
We have a lot of Canva lovers.
Okay, good.
Can you talk a little bit about, and I'm assuming you're going to cover it, but just the difference between PowerPoint and Canva?
Yeah, I mean, you can do this. PowerPoint is or PowerPoint is a computer-based program. They do have presentations like this one over here, but you have to be connected to Wi-Fi. They're great presentations, but this is how I cheat the system. If you notice in my presentation, I had this one here, and we'll kind of go through this. And I just take my little snipping tool, and you can tell I've snuck on somebody else's stuff on customize. I make a new thing here, and I just cover it. And then I get the graphics. I can copy it and put it into a PowerPoint presentation. So you can use both. They're not exclusive of each other. That's how I get around these stuff, because I love the graphics that they do. And you can still download it. I mean, it's downloadable here, and then you can put it in pictures, and then you can save it. What's nice about Canva in this way, in their newest iteration, is that they can do animation with this, and that's fun for people who like to visual things. And I think what you're going to see with folks with autism, this may be a better way to connect with folks. When we did our Families at the Forefront of Technology, we had a speaker come in and who'd done a lot of work researching technology and folks with autism, and they found that they actually related better to the technology. So when they were teaching children to play, instead of sitting next to them, playing with them, they would record the play and then let the kids watch it off the device, because folks with autism are often distracted by your hair, the smell, the textures, all this other stuff. And this helps folks get in a little bit more. And some folks are going to have some really good skill sets here, but they can pick their colors, their pictures, and all that stuff. And then you've got a nice tool to be able to use when jobs begin to open up and we figure out what the playing field is. But this is very sophisticated, and you can print it out so people can have a portfolio book that you can leave with the employer, which was always an old-time kind of strategy, but it was great because you'd say, I'm just going to drop this off and I'll pick it up later as a job coach. And then that usually got you a second interview, those kinds of things. So Canva's, I use it all the time. When we do podcasting, I use Canva to create our thumbnail pictures for it all the time. So it's a great program, and you can upload photos to it and videos. You can make it very, very personal, but you don't have to come up with a creative way of doing it, and it just makes it so much easier. And it has many different kinds of things. So from an agency perspective, as you're trying, and I noticed that, as I said earlier, there were a couple managers. You can see some of my designs I developed for this presentation are in here. But I think, encouraging people, rewarding people, sending them fun things, Giftlies are a good way to do that too. That's pretty easy off of your phone, but you can really customize this for the individual, and think about the rewards and the acknowledgement for the efforts that people are doing and keeping them engaged. And maybe people are feeling stressed, so maybe you send out a calming piece of design that says, don't forget to breathe, kind of do that. And so those are some of the Canva things that we do that I think are pretty easy to connect with. Now, we have a podcast of this, and I will show you this in a second. FaceTime. Last night, I was on FaceTime with 4 other people. I didn't know FaceTime could do a couple people, because when we interviewed Wynn Charles, who also has a podcast, Wynn has cerebral palsy. She just got back from Florida, where they're going to have a lot of infections there. But she was the only person with a disability at the podcasting conference that's done every year. And so she was, because she went to that, made the connections, she was featured yesterday on a virtual conference on podcasting. So there's some really great things that you can do with this. Now, this is Mikkel, and Mikkel is interviewing Wynn about living under the lockdown and the challenges that they have, because one of our goals is to, and I want to talk about goals and intention a little bit here, is our intention is that people with disabilities voices are heard, and that's why we started this podcast. So we have Mikkel's perspective and somewhat my perspective. I kind of am the facilitator of the conversation a little bit, but Mikkel is interviewing people. She interviewed Jim Warren, who was at the Community Summit last year, and talking about what are the similarities between being Native American and having a disability. And Jim has both, and his family had both. So they were able to have a really wonderful conversation. We have this with Wynn. Wynn talked about grief. We did a whole session on grief because Wynn's father died 6 months ago and her mother passed away a couple years ago. So Wynn doesn't have strong family support, but she lives in a community that is providing some support for her. And she decided, I have CP, I'm gonna get my degree in journalism. She has a strong intention. Mikkel was like, I'm gonna get the good stuff in life. And my intention was she was gonna have a prosperous life, not just a poor life, not just having self-determined life, but she was going to have a prosperous life. That's why she has a net worth that's okay with Social Security of a couple $100,000 now, because she bought a home, and that home is appreciated in the Denver market. So this is one of our new team rally things. I love showing you this kind of stuff, but we've got a bunch of artists with us now. So this is kind of an intention during this period of time that we're setting. So when you work with the folks you have, claim it. Say, this is what we're going to be. We're going to shine beautiful. We're going to, in this case, let's stay classy, sassy, and a little bit badassy. And so that kind of sets the tone for all the people that work with Mikkel on, don't be a victim. Don't come in here with your drama. Stay classy and be a little bit sassy, because Mikkel likes sassy. Because she's sassy. So that works on that. So those are the things. And one of the girls made this for us. I mean, I'd seen the saying and I thought, this is us, isn't it? And so one of the girls took the initiative that works with Mikkel to create this. And so you look at how you do that. Now, these low-tech things, I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, but I want to make sure I get everything. One of the things to kind of engage people in a different part of their brain is around creativity. And this is a great book I ordered. Well, I actually bought it at Amazon, but you can get it on Amazon, for people to kind of tell their story graphically and to develop other low-tech ways of communicating. I'm showing you a lot of high-tech stuff, but I'm showing you ways that you can communicate low-tech things. So this is a great book to help people kind of start thinking. And doodle books are very much the rage now. And so I thought, what am I going to do for stress? And these are the kinds of things I'm doing. Well, what this led to was, let's see, doing something like this, which would be a great project for somebody else. We took some recycled Amazon cardboard and some old Christmas paper, and we're making this now. Well, we're finding new skills and new interests. We had a painting party. We're finding out what else Mikkel can do. So when you're looking at this time period, and you're looking for activities to do, kind of think what else people can do. So this is our creation. Now, Mikkel lost interest in this, and now it's my project, but I'm having a blast with it, so it helps me take care of me. And it helps me find an inner artist that I didn't know I had. But I was on the call last night with my dance friends, because we're trying to stay connected with our community. And I've developed a lot of friends through dance, and we usually travel together. We were planning a trip in April to go down to Dominican Republic, and of course that faded. But we're trying to stay connected with each other. So we had 4 people on. If you have a new device, a newer phone, you can get up to 32 people on FaceTime. So that, I imagine from a staff perspective, you should be able to get a lot of people on FaceTime, and you can begin to, and you can, we recorded it, but we didn't get the sound. So I have a screen recorder on my phone, but it did not capture the sound. So if anybody has any ideas on that, I'd love to know it. So now let's talk about how you directly work with people. And so Gretchen here is a speech and language therapist. She is the third part of our team, which is our technology support as well. So Gretchen is working from home like everybody else. And so we recorded some of our first Zoom opportunity here. So I'm going to play a little bit of this so you can kind of see how that works in terms of how we're working with Mikkel, who is nonverbal, to communicate and be a part of it. She has a relationship developed, so that's already there. But now it's not in the home, it's via Zoom.
Hi, Gretchen.
Hi, Katherine. Hi, Mikkel. How are you guys? It's good to see you, Mikkel.
It's been an adjustment, huh?
Definitely a different experience.
Well, Mikkel kind of finds where she wants to start this off. She had it set up, but she's got some other things she wants to talk about too.
Well, I've got some ideas about what that might be. Hey there, Selena.
But Gretchen and I are trying to record this. So this is a learning curve for all of us as you kind of deal with the new normal, as we've talked about in our podcast earlier this week on building community through social distancing, which feels a lot more like social isolation in some times. Because today it's snowing in Denver and we're really inside. But we're just trying to figure this out. And Gretchen is now doing support through Zoom and distancing. So we're trying to record this, show you how we're doing it, how we're figuring it out. And we don't guys do this right away because there is a bit of a learning curve. But we're working on it, right, Mikkel? You want to say hello to everybody? Okay.
All right.
Okay. Other than welcome to the podcast right now. She's been really insistent on this, so we're going to see what she has to say.
So one of the challenges we had is the mic kind of gets mixed up on this, so it's got to be directly pointed at the individual while doing Zoom on this.
You want to find it? Tell us what you find it. Okay. So we're trying to follow as much routine as we have been able to establish so far, Gretchen. And we're struggling a little bit like everybody else on how to do that. But we're thinking that technology can be a solution for us to staying in touch. So we're looking at a couple apps. I sent you an app today on group chatting. We're looking at Zoom. We're looking at different ways in which we can provide ongoing support. But as Mikkel's finding what she wants to talk about, I would like to talk to the case managers and the employment specialists out there, and particularly maybe the folks in your line, is that I think we're going to have to adjust people's support plans because they were built on people being out in the community, and now the community is less available to us. Mikkel can't go for coffee, which I can't tell you disappoints her enormously. And we're just trying to figure out how to build that community. We had a painting party on Monday, and that was fun. But it's kind of tough on all of her support team because they're trying to be everybody to her because everybody else is doing their own adjustments and stuff. So what are your thoughts? How have things changed for you in terms of providing support? How are we? I think we're both interested in getting on top of this so people don't have problems as they go forward. And yeah. Like we're experiencing over here.
Exactly. Well, it's been a fast forward learning curve with the online telepractice here. And I've found that talking about switching plans and models, I've had to switch my model to more of a parent focused and a coaching type of model than a direct service type of model. Because that's what everybody's doing. I mean,
well,
yeah.
And I'm finding myself going, as many parents are, becoming more a part of the direct service part of it. And where I used to kind of help set things up
I'm now doing a lot more day-to-day stuff with the folks and helping them problem solve in terms of what we do to keep Michelle engaged and her wheelchair broke. And
Catherine, move the computer a little bit so I can hear it. There you go.
So her wheelchair broke and her van broke. So she's had, and you've been through some things where you went through a tough time too. and fortunately, that's all better for you. But we've had a lot of adjusting to do.
It's a lot of adjusting.
So hearing about every day, about 6 times a day, when's the wheelchair going to get fixed, and having to wait on parts and stuff like that. So anyway, are you ready, Mikkel? All right. I think she's
all
ready.
right. We're ready, Mikkel. Let's hear it.
Working with Gretchen.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Hold on a sec. We kind of lost a button. There you go. There you go. Get it, girl.
Hello, my coffee drinking
You
techies.
got it.
I'm back in Spency, here to talk about my new normal and working with Gretchen.
Your new normal and working with Gretchen. Gretchen
Right.
on a computer.
What is it, Mikkel? There we go.
Thank you so much for listening.
We're not done yet. What do you want to tell her about your schedule? Is that what you need to say? Okay.
Tell
well,
me
let's-
about that schedule.
Okay,
Let's-
I'm not gonna, we've got a long time here to share with that, and you can watch the whole thing in its entirety on our YouTube channel. But I hopefully that this gave you some idea about the process. It's not an easy process. It's kind of pick and choose, and Mikkel's learning how to communicate virtually when she used to have people sitting next to her. And so there's an adjustment to her as well. And from Gretchen, who is one of the best professionals I've ever met, and she's having to adjust to focusing in on this computer versus working with people and helping them. So she's having to engage the families a lot more. And I think you're going to find that to be part of the case too.
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah,
I am just going to jump in because I have a couple questions for you.
okay.
And the first one, I just wanted to circle back on a question earlier about addressing appropriate boundaries for job coaches.
Oh yeah, thank you.
People interested in that. And then also just about for clients that aren't that don't have access to computers or technology, how to work with them.
Well, I think part of what you're going to do with the folks that don't have, you need to do a technology assessment. You need to figure out how you can get some technology to people, because there's going to be limits to doing things over the phone. You're not going to be able to do in-person visits, I'm wondering, but you're going to have, your goal will be to help people get connected. And so finding out where the barriers are to getting connected. Is it financial for families? Is it they live in a rural place? I know Marcia Throckdale's husband works on 5G, and he's focused on rural development for internet access for people. Those are the kinds of things that you may need to find yourself helping people do. Now, you're right about the case management versus the employment specialist. Where is the line? And I don't know if I can tell you where the line is. I think you have to figure out what you're going to be able to do within the scope of your agreement. And then if you remember at the beginning, we said, come up with a new agreement. And that's where your boundaries start, is in your agreement, and understanding what you can, and you let the family know, you let the individual know, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. You may need to talk to your case manager about that. Shall we get a hold of your case manager? Those would be the things that you can pass people off, rather than saying, I can't help you with that. Pass them over to the person that can help them with that. Because it's going to be important for them. They're not going to know, they're just going to come to the closest person ever. Now, with Gretchen here, we know that she's got limits. She works for an hour. We have expectations about what she's going to do. She also knows that we're not going to necessarily do things exactly, depending on what Mikkel is. Mikkel has seizures. She might have a seizure in the middle of that. We don't know. And so you have to be fluid as well. So they need to set what your boundaries are, and you need to set your own boundaries, and help them define that for them. But that's part of the working agreement. And then be consistent. But I personally when people call me and it's out of my bailiwick, I just try to pass them to somebody who can help them. And instead of saying, I can't do that, that's not my job. That doesn't feel good right now. I mean, because this is a community effort. And, you know, again, if they don't have the resources, then maybe part of your job is to help connect them to the resources, not do the work for them, but help them connect and come up with a process to help them. And because that resource development, resource engagement are things that are absolutely skill development. They're work-related activities in my mind. And so, but just find out what you're comfortable. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure if I can give a whole lot more on that, but.
Yep. I think you covered it. I'll keep my eye on the chat if anyone has any follow-ups.
Yeah, please follow up with other, you know, if you can give me a situation, I can help you work through that. I'm more than glad to do that. So we kind of covered this work profile piece already, but I want to shift over here to high-tech kinds of things that we've engaged in. And I'm going to leave it in this format because I'm going to show you the podcast. But I think it's really important to rethink things. Now, Mikkel and I had been doing, you know, the website and all that. And then it was her brother that said, you and Mikkel know so much. Why don't you start a podcast? And I go, I don't know anything about podcasting. I don't, you know, I'm a boomer. This is all new to me. And he said, Mom, you just, you know, it's not that hard. You just put a microphone. And so, but I had to research what microphone and I had to get, you know, I started doing some YouTubing, which again is all billable hours in our state. I don't know about your state, but that is researching a new career opportunity. And that is billable as long as Mikkel's part of that piece of that, and we're together, we're looking at those videos and we're looking, is this an opportunity that we want to develop? And then remember Win Charles on Facebook? We hired Win Charles. In Denver, we have an extra fund called a mill levy fund that is designated for the citizens of Denver to meet the needs. So you may have a fund, a community fund that might be able to do that, but it paid for the wheelchair, or not the wheelchair repair, but the van repair. And so you can use it to get certain things like that for a household. But we hired a person with a disability who was new podcasting, and she helped us develop this podcasting. So think about how you can hire people with disabilities to help you do these things, and see if you can find some resources within your community to do that. The mill levy was something that a lot of families don't know about, but you know, somebody in your organization has to be the researcher and get out there and see what resources are available. I think too often we think that if Medicaid doesn't pay for it, we can't pay for it. Well, that's not true. It means that somebody else can pay for it. It's just not going to be Medicaid. And I learned in those 11 years where I had to fundraise for everything that people would sell grocery store gift certificates, and a church that I didn't even go to would help pay for a new wheelchair for Mikkel. I learned that in her elementary school when she needed her first device, and I said, I don't have money. There's nobody's going to pay for this. School's not going to pay for this. And I did job development. I went to the principal. I said, do you know any resources? Do you know anybody can help? He said, well, we'll let you talk to the PTO and I'll put a little thing in the school newsletter. And darned if he didn't call me a week later and say, well, I have good news and bad news. And I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, nobody knows any other resources. I said, well, what's the good news? He says, I have a check here for $2,500. From who? From one of the parents in your daughter's class, who appreciates the value of technology and also appreciates the value of your daughter and what she brings to their kids' education. $2,500, anonymous. I mean, the money is there. Even in this time, the money is there. So don't let money ever be a problem for you. You just have to find it in different places. And so we hired Win to help us do that. And she taught me how to set up Lipson and, you know, and iTunes accounts and all that. And she gave me the benefit of her knowledge. And she's one of the people we hired. We've had over 2,200 downloads off of the podcast. So that's a pretty decent download. And hopefully you all will go and download it too. So that'll give us a few more. But since there are 500 of you, we expect to see 500 downloads here real soon. But you can find it. It's on iTunes if you're an iTunes follower. And then if not, if you just Google the Shining Beautiful Series podcast, and we have 46 episodes that talk a lot about parents. There are several I got some great stuff from Carrie Griffin for you employment specialists. Carrie Griffin and Bob Nemick, I've got 2 hours worth of stuff on what they would do if they were your age now, and how they would do it in this time and where they would begin. It's a very powerful series. And Jim Corey is part of this. Deborah McLean, who is part of the WISE staff, she's part of this, and Cecily Colson, who talks about leadership. So we've got a wide variety of people. Well, look how we're building community virtually. Mikkel gets to talk to all these people, get connected. We've got Shay Tanis from the Coleman Institute. We haven't posted that because of all this other stuff that came up. She was supposed to go on a couple of weeks ago, but Shay is head of, co-chair of the Coleman Institute, which is one of the leading organizations on technology and disability. So you can ask anybody to do a podcast and look at all the skills, and we've created this opportunity for her. And surprisingly enough, people buy, now she has an online store through Etsy. They're buying bracelets on Etsy because we promote via Facebook. So we have gone virtual for the most part, although Mikkel still gets the thrill of selling at a coffee shop. But as we know, those are not available to her. So I like to think of as a parent of plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. So think of it during this time. You're going to have several possibilities that you're going to explore. You're going to come up with some themes which are typical for discovery, but you're going to discover new things. You can take pieces of the old plan, but the world's changed. The world's changed. And so how do people earn money in the 21st century is one of the questions that you're going to ask yourself. How does a person with a disability with the skill set that I'm working with, how would they earn a living in this virtual world? And so start asking different questions about how you're going to do this, and that should help you just a little bit on that.
Hey, Katherine.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a couple different things. I wanted to remind you, first of all, that it is 2:51. So we have about 9 minutes left. We're also getting we're getting a lot of questions about the platforms that you mentioned, so FaceTime, Canva, et cetera, and them being HIPAA compliant. And if you know anything about that.
Well, I know Zoom can be HIPAA compliant, and a lot of these, particularly Zoom, you have to get a certain certificate to do that. That's what Gretchen did. She went and did that. Now, a lot of these, with Canva and stuff, it's password protected. I guess I would have to explore that. I don't know that offhand. It's not something that I've had to worry about as a parent, but that would be something to check out for sure. But I would think if you put it in the course of storytelling, I don't know. That's a good question. I would ask Jim Corey about that and Marcia Throckhill. Those are the people that would probably have that down a little bit better than I do. But since we're almost at time, I want to show you a couple of ways that we use apps, and hopefully this is going to work for us, because we use an app called Pictello that we absolutely love. And Mikkel does her own training, and and again, most of these are available on our website as soon as they load. But we put Mikkel in charge of hiring her own team, and she trains them via technology. So we really like it, and see if this one will play.
Pictello is still great for me and Mikkel, even 6 months later, because there's times in the day that I don't usually work with her. So if I had to suddenly pick up a time that I wasn't used to, Pictello can tell me like how to put her to bed. She has extremely particular tastes in her bed arrangements.
So, and we'll try this other one really quick. but I don't know if it may take a minute to load. So while it's loading, I'll tell you, Pictello is about a $20 app that you can get, and it's a storytelling app.
Yes, is this your first time making bracelets with Mikkel?
This is my first time making bracelets with Mikkel.
All right, Mikkel has her tutorial right here on her Pictello app that she created for teaching people how to make bracelets with her. Okay, Mikkel, go ahead. We're ready.
My bracelets. First, help me take my materials out of the black cabinet by the window. They are in clear plastic bins.
All right. Looks like we have that done.
Next, lay everything out onto the table. See the picture.
Mikkel, can you show her the picture so she can see?
Thank you.
Open a bin and ask me, what color or beads do you want to work with?
All right, Mikkel.
Put the tray in front of me and I will point to the ones I want to use.
Which one do you want to use, Mikkel? Thinking about it? Okay. Do you want me to open another one for you? Green ones?
So that gives you an idea of how we use these different apps to help her be proficient in that. So Mikkel she's the boss. She's the boss. And so we created these books, and you can take this time to create these books on how do you manage people, what do I want, tell your stories. Pictello is a really easy way to do that. As you can see, you can import video into Pictello, you can import pictures. But those are the ways, you know, because Mikkel can't physically do the job, but she can design, and then we supplement. And I think I have just a couple other resources I want to share with you. We might have a little bit of time. For Google has got some great apps, and I just wanted to share with you some of that. Let's see, I gotta find, no, that's not it. Oh, by the way, here's a list of companies that are giving free subscriptions due to school closures that you might be able to get to be a part of it. And they have activities and apps that are going to be available for you. And so there's text to write, some reading things that are all helpful to you. And let me see if I can find this other one. There it is. No, that's not it. I don't know, but I'm going to share with you this. If you haven't seen this, this is somebody else's, but I think everybody should do this for your community. This is a thing on customized employment that uses some of the things that we've talked about in terms of introducing people to the elements of customized employment, and they've got a video that they've created around that. Talks about discovery, different things. These are all tools that you can help.
This overview of customized employment will highlight essential elements of providing.
And so I don't want to spend too much time on that, but that's there. And I believe I sent that to you guys, but there's some resources here that could be very helpful for you in terms of working with people. Again, a lot of this is going to be updated in terms of, you know, how do we move forward with employment and all that. But I do want to get to this one final slide real quickly. But one of the things that I would do on this, and the thing is Google has read and write, but go to the Google site, and you've got a link to go to that, is to come up with, this is your agreement with the family, and it's a quick one. It's focus on the next 3 months. Forget everything else. Forget the past, forget beyond that, but just focus on the next 3 months. When you're working with a person and their family, what do you desire? I desire to sell bracelets. What do you need to sell those bracelets? Oh, I need an Etsy store. Well, who's going to help you do that? Well, I'm not going to do it, but we got Selena to do it because Selena's an artist. So I set up the basics of it, but she puts the pictures up with Mikkel, and she helps her as part of her daily activities. And one of the things I'm looking for Colorado to do is pay, I think we're going to look at a new model of employment for people. We've got to involve the parents and the residential folks. And I think what we're going to work on is developing a line item and Medicaid waiver for employment supports that can come out of a residential and help families do some of this work for you, because it's going to be a stretch for everybody to do it. And it's not a real sustainable model even before COVID happened, but this is it. But come up with the power of three. It's a very, very powerful thing. If you break it down into three things that you're going to do, and you can do this for yourself. What do I desire in terms of working virtually? What do I need? You can tell your supervisor, this is what I need, and you together can figure out who's going to help you learn how to do this. And of course, WISE is going to be providing a lot of training for you. They're a wonderful organization. You're very lucky to have them. And any final questions, because we're just about at time.
Catherine, I don't have any questions. Just a lot of thank yous and positive feedback. And yeah, thank you so much for presenting with us today.
Thank you very much, you all, and I wish you the best. And contact me if you have any questions. I'm glad to help.